Hazrat Ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhu says that Hazrat Abu Sufyan told him that in those days he was on a business trip in Syria along with a group of Quraysh. It was during the time when there was a peace accord between Allah's Apostle sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the infidels of the Quraysh. Abu Sufyan said, Qaisar's messenger found us somewhere in Syria. So he took us and my companions to Ilya. When we reached near Qaisar, he was sitting in his court wearing the crown, and the great Roman dignitaries were around him. He asked his interpreter to ask us who, in terms of genealogy, is the closest to the man who thinks he is a prophet. Abu Sufyan said that he said, I am closely related to him in terms of genealogy. He asked, what is the relationship between you and him? I said, he is my cousin, because there was no one from Banu Abd Munaf saves me in our that contingent. Then Qaisar said, come close to me, and he ordered my companions to stand behind me. Then Qaisar said to the interpreter, inform his companions that I am going to ask him about the person who has claimed prophethood. If he, Sufyan, tells a lie, you should contradict him. Abu Sufyan said, by Allah Jalla Jalaluhu, if I had not felt shame that day for being branded as a liar by my companions while telling a lie on being inquired, I would have definitely told a lie when he asked me about him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But I felt shame that people would consider me a liar. So I told him what was a fact. He again ordered his interpreter, ask him, what is his genealogical status amongst you? I replied, he belongs to a distinguished family amongst us. He asked, did anyone else amongst you ever claim prophethood? I thereupon replied in the negative. He asked, have you ever found him telling a lie before he claimed prophethood? I replied, no. He asked, had there been any king amongst his ancestors? I said, no. He asked, are his followers chiefs or weak? I replied, they are weak. He asked, are they increasing or decreasing in number? I replied, but they are multiplying. He asked, has anyone committed apostasy for being offended after embracing his religion? I replied, no. He asked, does he ever renege on his promise? I said, no. And there is a peace accord for a fixed period of time between us, but we fear he will renege on his promise. Abu Sufyan said, I could not add even one false statement except this one, because I feared my companions would declare me a liar. He asked, have you fought a war with him, or he ever fought a war with you? I replied, yes. He asked, what was the result of the war between you? I replied, war is just like a bucket. Sometimes they dominated and sometimes we did. He asked, what does he preach? I replied, he commands us to worship only one God and not to associate anyone with him, and forbids us to worship what our ancestors used to defy, and bids us to perform prayer, give alms, be modest, fulfill the promise, and to return the trust. So when I had stated all, he, Qaisar, asked his interpreter to say to me, I asked you about his lineage, and you told me that he belonged to an esteemed lineage, and every apostle have been sent in such a lineage of his people. I asked you whether someone amongst you have ever claimed prophethood. If it had been so, I would have declared that he was just following his predecessor. And I asked you whether you had ever found him telling a lie before he claimed prophethood, but you replied in the negative. So I grasped that it was not possible that someone shunned telling a lie to people, but he might tell a lie about Allah Jalla Jalaluhu. And I asked you whether there had been any king from his forefathers, but you replied in the negative. So I said to myself, if there had been a king from his ancestors, I would have declared that he only wished to get the kingship of his elders. And I asked you whether his followers were rich or poor, and you replied that his followers were poor, and generally the apostles' followers were poor. And I asked you whether his companions were decreasing or increasing, and you said that they were multiplying, and this is the feature of a perfect faith. And I asked you whether there was anybody who, after embracing his religion, got displeased with it and renounced it, but you replied in the negative. And this is the feature of faith, that when it penetrates hearts, nobody gets displeased with it. And I asked you whether he begged out of his promise, but you replied in the negative. And apostles alayhimussalam never reneged on their promises. And I asked you whether you and he have fought with each other, and you said that it happened so, and the outcome of the war remained like a bucket. Sometimes you dominated them, and sometimes they dominated you. The apostles are trailed in this way, but at last victory licks their feet. And I asked you what he commanded you to do, and you said that he commanded you to worship Allah Jalla Jalaluhu and not to associate any partner with him, and forbade you to worship what your forefathers used to worship, and commanded you to perform prayer, give alms, be modest, fulfill the promise, and return the trust. And this is the attribute of a prophet. I knew well that a prophet would soon appear, but I did not have any idea that he would be from you. And if it is right, whatever you have said, he will soon be the owner of this place under my feet. If I had had a hope to reach him, I would have visited him. If I had been with him, I would have washed his feet, become his servant. Abu Sufyan said, then he asked for the letter of Allah's Apostle sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It was read, and it read, in the name of Allah Jalla Jalaluhu, the most affectionate, extremely beneficent. It is from Muhammad, the bondsman of Allah Jalla Jalaluhu and his apostle, to Herakl, the emperor of Rome. Salutation be upon him who follows the divine guidance to proceed. I invite you to Islam. If you embrace Islam, you will remain safe and sound. If you embrace Islam, Allah Jalla Jalaluhu will give you twofold reward. If you turn down this offer, the sin of your subject will also be into your account. And O people of book, come towards such a word as is common between us and you. That is, we worship none but Allah and associate no partner with him, and none of us make one another as Lord beside Allah. Then if they do not accept, then say, bear witness that we are Muslims. Hazrat Abu Sufyan said when he had finished his talk, the voices of the Roman chiefs rose, and there was much hue and cry, but I could not know what they were saying. We were ordained to go out, so we came out. When I came out with my companions and we got a seclusion, I said to my companions, how significant has the status of Ibn Abi Qabsha become, that the emperor of Bani Asfar, the Romans, fears him. Abu Sufyan says, by Allah Jalla Jalaluhu, since then I started feeling humiliation, and I became sure that his religion would soon become dominant, till Allah Jalla Jalaluhu infused Islam into my heart, though I would dislike it. Sahih Bukhari Hadith number 2941.